is defined as the smallest indivisible unit of information or energy. A quantum in physics is the smallest indivisible unit of information and energy, in which waves of information and energy are either emitted or absorbed. So a quantum of light, for example, is called a photon. A quantum of electricity is called an electron. A quantum of gravity is called a graviton. But what's a thought? It's also a unit of information and energy. So if you have the thought, I'm going to wiggle my toes, then that thought has two components. Energy, otherwise your toes wouldn't wiggle. If thoughts did not have energy or an animating life force, we would all be paralyzed. And information. And just like the whole universe is made up of energy and information, which becomes material things, so to our physical body is the material expression of these quantum events. We are essentially bundles of thought that are manifesting as molecules. The old paradigm said that human beings are self-contained, independent entities. And now we recognize that we are not self-contained, independent, but we are focal points in that unified field, that whole ocean of intelligence, consciousness, energy, and information. And we are inseparably connected, interconnected with the patterns of intelligence in the whole cosmos. We are a web of relationships. And this is interesting to understand. So, even our physical bodies are in relationship to each other as part of that field. And our emotional, intellectual, mental, spiritual bodies are in relationship to each other. We are, in fact, a set of relationships. So even with one breath that you breathe in 10 to the power of 22 atoms, which is a huge amount of raw material that comes into your body. With each breath you breathe out 10 to the power of 22 atoms that go out from every little cell of your body. You're literally breathing out bits and pieces of your heart and kidney and brain tissue. And technically speaking, we're all intimately sharing our organs with each other all the time. Factually, you can do radioactive isotope studies and you can show that you have in your body right now 1 million atoms that were once in the body of Christ, or Buddha, or Moses, or Gandhi, or Saddam Hussein, or Genghis Khan, or anyone that you want to think about. In just the last 3 weeks, 1 quadrillion atoms have gone through your body that have gone through the body of every other living species on our planet. So think of a tree in Africa, a squirrel in Siberia, a peasant in China, and you have atoms, raw material in your body that was circulating there about 3 weeks ago. And in about 1 year, you replace almost all the atoms in your body. A new liver every 6 weeks, a new stomach lining every 5 days, a new skeleton every 3 months. Even the DNA, which holds the memories of millions of years of evolutionary time, the actual raw material, the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen, it comes and goes every 6 weeks. So the physical body you have today is not the same as the physical body you had a year ago or 2 years ago, down to the last atom, because we are recycled earth and water and space and air and fire, recycled elements that are constantly and ever in dynamic exchange with everything else that's also constantly and ever in dynamic exchange in that field of transformations. So our physical bodies are never the same. In fact, we are changing our physical bodies as effortlessly as we change our clothes all the time. Therefore, our sense of identity, if it comes from our physical bodies, it's an illusory sense of identity. We are not our physical bodies, which are part of the body of the universe. And the body of the universe is constantly and ever in dynamic exchange within itself, and we are part of that field. Now, the same thing holds true of our subtle body or our emotional body or our thoughts, because our thoughts are not our own. Nietzsche, the German philosopher, once said, we live under the presumption that we think, but most of the time we are being thought. And we are being thought by this collective field. In other words, every thought that we have is context-bound. It emerges out of a context, and that context is cultural, it's historical, it's religious, it's mythological. No single thought arises by itself. It is context bound. Let's say 100 years ago you said to somebody, I'm going to take American Airlines and go to Disney World. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. Okay, because that thought, I'm going to take American Airlines to Disney World, comes out of a context of history that has emerged over the last 100 years. It's part of the collective psyche, that particular thought. It's based on all that history and all the mythology. When you say, I'm going to see Mickey Mouse, that's part of our collective mythology at the moment. Wouldn't have meant anything to anyone even 70 years ago. So even our thoughts are constantly part of that dynamic field of energy and information. We can't link our identity neither to the physical body, nor to our thoughts, nor to our emotions, which are also context-bound, which are part of a collective mix, nor to our personalities, because our personalities are also transforming, just like our body transforms. It's transforming, it's evolving, it's growing, it's changing. So I can't anchor my identity even to my personality. I'm a dynamic bundle of information and energy. And more than that, I'm a dynamic bundle of intelligence that is constantly and ever in dynamic exchange with the universe of intelligence. And as I continue to evolve, there is no one thing that I can say is me. There's no one thing that I can say that's me in this field of change. There's a field of non-change that we can anchor ourselves to, and we'll go into that later. But I want us to begin to look at ourselves not as these physical bodies, because everything we'll be learning this week is based on a paradigm which says that which I call my physical body is just a place that my memories and dreams call home for the time being. And even my memories and dreams are constantly changing. I'm not my memories and dreams. I'm a deeper level of existence which goes through these transformations. So we are not self-contained independent entities, but focal points in the unified field. And I will discuss the unified field in detail. We are inseparably connected with the patterns of intelligence that permeate the whole cosmos. We are a web of relationships. Our bodies, the old paradigm said, our bodies have well-defined edges, because that's what the eyes of the flesh said. This is a well-defined edge to our body. We are separate. But the new paradigm says there are no well-defined edges to our body. We are not separate. And we are totally interdependent, inseparable. Our bodies are changing, pulsating patterns, a part of the whole process. Our body is part of the universal body. Our mind is part of the universal mind. And then there were a couple of other ideas there, and that have to do with the whole notion of even space and time being structured out of this field. Because, again, in the early part of the century, Einstein said that time is relative. Everyone knows that. Okay, that it depends on the speed of the observer and the position of the observer. But what Einstein did not explain was the fact that we can have different experiences of time while experiencing the same thing, being in the same place. So what Einstein did not say is time is not just dependent on the speed and position of the observer, it is dependent on the observation that you're making. Time is dependent, the experience of time is dependent on the observation that you're making. So if the observation that you're making is, I'm having a good time, then what happens? Time flies. If the observation that you're making is that I'm bored, then time drags. If the observation that you're making is, I'm running out of time, then you actually start to run out of time. Even your biological clock speeds up. So we know a lot of people whose internal dialogue is, I'm running out of time. They look at the same clocks that you and I see, but for them they're moving much faster. So if you examine these people, you'll find they have speeded up biological clocks. Faster heart rates, jittery platelets with high levels of adrenaline. Even the platelets